They're gonna kill the love of my life.
David!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous!
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is Llorraine Neithardt, and you are listening to Venus Unplugged, the virtual heartbreak hotel. And what we're doing here is we're exploring the nature of love, whether it be heartbreak, whether it be one's dreams, creativity, art, beauty, all things Venusian. And her little vengey side. She definitely has a revengeful side, which one day I'll actually do a whole episode on Venus's revenges, which are pretty astounding. She really knew how to get to somebody when she got pissed off or wasn't honored. And that's what we're trying to do here. We are attempting to honor her nature, not in the collective patriarchal way, and because she's the essence of all things beautiful, and her son is Eros. Her son is the aspect of herself. So anything that's imbued with love or beauty, or the oh dear, or the lack of it, we get upset, we get devastated when there is no beauty. I remember years ago I went to see the Parsifal, that 5-hour opera, which nobody told me it was 5 hours. And after about 2 hours, I whispered to my companion, if I don't see beauty in the next half an hour, I'm going to fucking perish. Because it's Wagnerian, it's all about the Grail, and of course by 5 hours later, when you finally do see the Grail, you're so excited, of course you love it, because he has this magnificent gold, which is the color of Venus. So today, last few weeks, we spoke about the elements, the 4 elements of the feminine, and those women, and or the feminine within men, who relate to mother. As I said, you can't get on the planet without one. And so that's pretty powerful stuff. And the mother is the one who relates to the child. Her main focus is the children, or whoever deems her children, or who she cares for, and often treats the husband or lover as a child, as a boy. And that gets her into a little bit of trouble. So we look at that, and what we're trying to work with here is, I've been in practice for 3 decades, and every story is the story. It's the most important storyline that the person's soul is unfolding. And once they begin to realize that there are patterns in psyche, in the unconscious, that are motivating them. And sure, they can get a couple of years out of repressing it or forcing it or whatever, but eventually it shows up in conditions or, some dynamic starts to happen in their life, and then, it's showtime. The archetypal energies are trying to make themselves known, and they make ourselves known through woundedness. They make themselves known through illnesses, dynamics that we never expected. And then we, call on one another and project onto another to play various roles so we can see. That's what projection is. It's automatic. We can never stop it. We project out so we can see our own material. Now, if there's enough consciousness, meaning awareness, all right, we can then look and go like, whoa, wait a second, here's my mother complex, and I'm just asking that person to wear that awful outfit because I'm mad at the mother energy. It may not be one's personal mother. It may be archetypal mother, okay? Or the fairy godmother. And that's what happens in projections. So we get to, it's great and grand and profound theater. That's how the gods taught us the principles. And we are in a world that is void of the authenticity of Aphrodite, this goddess of love. Yeah, we've got some cheap imitations, but not her essence, not her sacredness. So today we are going to begin the series on the Hetaira, okay, and that's spelled Hetaria. And she is the woman. She is one of the eternal archetypes in the woman's psyche, and she relates to the Hetaira. She relates to the man. Her focus in life, her orientation, is to be the companion of the male. All right, she may be a mother, she may not. Okay, but she's much more interested in that. In ancient times, she could also be a courtesan who was trained in the womanly arts, and they weren't necessarily. It wasn't always sexual. Okay, it was the intellectual courtesan. So she was educated. And a few weeks ago, I put up Veronica Franco, and I will do that again because she was a very important poet and courtesan and lived the life and the profession of the courtesan. But we're not going to focus so much about that, because then people get into judging, well, she's just a hoe or a hooker or whatever, and she's not. We are talking about the essence of what motivates us. Now, what I see happening when a woman has the Hetaira deep in her psyche and that's motivating her, very often she winds up with a married man or an unavailable man, and she's beside herself. She cannot figure out, why does this always happen to me? But when I help her begin to explore this archetype that is predominant but unconscious, it knows what it's doing, but she doesn't know about it, she can then make choices about how she wants to be in the world and how she wants to relate to this without having to forfeit her own validity, okay? Or if a woman is positioned to be mother and wife, and that's not true of her nature. She's miserable. She hates it. She wants to be the companion. She wants to be the one who's part, and very often powerful men will have women around who are their inspiration. And if we understood it and didn't judge it, because that's what religion has done, it's first and foremost separated us from our natural instincts and our passions and the way energy has to go. So some of the images of the Hetaira, okay, is Aphrodite or Basset. We like that because that's the cat goddess. Meow. The cat always represents the feminine in the dream world. So if you have a dream of a cat and it's got a boo-boo, take care. Your feminine is wounded. All right. Certainly Veronica Franco, Mary Magdalene. All right, she was the Hetaira to Christ. She was his companion. She also was the one who bankrolled his mission. She was very rich, and she supported him and his 12 men there. Okay, even though they hated her. Marilyn Monroe. Now, look at how she suffered. She was worshipped, but she also suffered because she didn't understand. And what she suffered, I don't think she suffered from her own nature. She suffered from how she was being judged. And that was very painful. And how she was being treated. See, if she would have understood the power of what was motivating her, that was her authentic self, that was her sovereign self, which is part of what I think would be marvelous if we could understand. And we also go through stages, okay? Very often a teenager, we want to be the Hetaira. That's what we want to be. But we want the command and the beauty of that. We don't want to be abused, okay? And also the Shekinah, okay, Scheherazade, which is the story of Scheherazade is a wonderful teaching. It's a shamanistic teaching story about how she trains her lover, not the male, not to kill her off, but to bring him. In Scheherazade, she restores the wounded king into his power, and that's very much what the Hetaira does. Okay, she doesn't want the power for herself, and certainly Tony Wolfe. Tony Wolfe that's how this all started. Okay, Tony Wolfe. These four feminine types this is based on the work of Tony Wolfe, who was Jung's companion in life. So we are looking at this, and that's what we're trying to go for, is to just step back from our opinions and what we think we know and really explore this aspect that is in all of us. And when it's strong in your being, because that's how you operate in the world, that's what your soul wants, and you begin to explore this and understand, you're much happier, you feel a sense of yourself, and you can get the gold that's in this way of, these choices that we make. And so this is a very complex type, this Hetaira, because people just want it like it's, split in half, good or bad. And it's not true. And there's a little bit of her in all of us, but some women have it stronger, okay? So she represents the woman who's attracted to her male partner, but rarely through marriage. Okay. That's not her main thing. Her identity doesn't come. Now, that's not to say there aren't moments when the mother or that marriage energy comes up, because that's the opposite. So sometimes her shadow, she'll have her day of, wanting to be the mother, but then it's like, somehow it just never works out. So or the wife, and she goes back. And if you understand that what is operating inside of you is the Hetaira, that that's your focus, you'd rather be a mistress than a wife, cool. That's how it goes. Right. So if she's married or unmarried, okay, so she can be, okay, but he's the lover. He's more the lover than the husband. And how do we start to understand her today? What does she represent? What is her focus? And how not to judge her? Because the woman who's totally focused on the mother longs to be the Hetaira. He never tells me about his work. Well, because she's too busy being the mother. But if you can call the Hetaira up too, he'll tell you about his work or whatever else you want to know. Okay. So for the contemporary Hetaira, okay, the first priority of her world goes to the quality of her relationship life with her lover. That's what she's focused on, whether consciously or unconsciously. And now that's big, because we can have this going on unconsciously, and we just can't understand that we're running the show. We don't really want to get married. We don't want the bonds of that, the cultural and collective bonds of that thing called marriage. It doesn't make us feel free and whole. But if we don't know that that's what our true heart and true psyche longs for and wants to live that out, we long for shit we really don't want. We long for a life we really don't want, because it's not true of our being. And that's what the purpose. There's so much heartbreak because we're not living the life that is true of how we're really orientated. And we've got thousands of lifetimes, so we get to be everything. So don't worry about it, So she's the one who's identified basically with the lover or whoever she wants to bring that feminine essence to and that feminine wisdom to. She's not less than the man. She is co-creator with the man. She sees it in that way, okay? And so her primary objective and anchor for her ego orientation lies in the arena of personal relationships with her partner. this personal dynamics is also true of the mother, but for her, so the mother goes for the children, but for her, it remains, she cannot grow from her own inner life unless she carries this kind of connection. Now, she can inspire, she can be an inspiration. Doesn't mean it has to be a lover. She can be, just an inspiration for other people to help them develop this connection. Okay. Now, what very often happens, and I think it also happens because it's a shadow aspect, and if we could make the Hetaira more conscious that she can develop other parts of herself that needs to grow, the Hetaira remains unable to grow and develop her own inner life, and she carries a lonely and often tragic shadow. As she loves greatly, she may also suffer greatly, and her greatest suffering comes when she loses connection to herself by becoming totally absorbed in her relational life. So this is tricky, and I see it happen. You fell in love and your brains fell out, okay? Now, of course, in the first 6 months of projection, which was what love is all about, all that stuff, all that energy comes up, all that archetypal divinity comes up. But then, when you kind of merge with one another, but then, you don't lose sight of what your own goals and values are. So that's the danger of, it's the danger of actually any one of this, that we could so over-identify that we're not balanced, all right? And with her, who has such a strong eros, that's how it needs to live. So she can also focus her energy in her art and her poetry and her writing, okay, which is partly one of the greatest inspirations that come out of heartbreak is great art, because there's nothing else we can do with the awakening, the awareness. See, the suffering is about awakening. When we're suffering in love, it's not because we're falling apart and dying. We are awakening. It's bigger, and the storyline is bigger, and the image is bigger, and the feelings are bigger than we could ever imagine. So we're aching ourselves opened into love. Same thing happens spiritually. I mean, if you've ever had a heart opening, it's unbelievably painful. And a little psychotic, quite frankly. You go a little nuts. Everybody's like, oh, it's so sweet. No, it's not. It's a huge, profound force that happens. So this type, okay, as I said, we can have all four, right, but we have a predominant one. What she nurtures, and she needs to also nurture her own creativity. And she's very much part of the male world by virtue of her own nature. She's a nurturer and an element in the male world, which is most often noticeably missing, and an intense, creative, rational, and joyous sexuality and a spiritual and intellectual interaction. So she's very alive in that. She'll be in the business world, or she'll be inspiring people. Now, Aphrodite, which is, my favorite, my all-time favorite, my passion in life is to bring her back into our society in a way where we really do understand her nature. And she's not, seduction is one of her skills, but what she does, what that essence, what that archetype does, is it seduces us into, or guides us into, beauty, love, passion. How could we live life without having a passion for something or someone? All right. So this energy of Aphrodite, to understand her not in a judgmental way, okay, like let's say the sacred prostitutes, which were, maybe I'll actually talk about that the next time, the sacred prostitutes, And that journey in ancient time, when the woman, before she was married, she would go into the temple of the sacred prostitute. She would prepare, and she would give her virginity, her first lovemaking, to a stranger. Now, to the modern world, that seems like, what? Okay. But it was sacred. She was connected to Aphrodite or Ishtar, okay, the sacred feminine. So it wasn't like what we see today. It's an ancient evocation. And then she would return home, having been initiated, and then she would marry. Very different than today. Maybe that still is happening in some way, where women need to have lovers before they marry, so they can understand what that's about and not feel guilty that these are the rights of Aphrodite. But unconsciously, see, the whole trick is when it's unconscious, then we do not get the dignity, the sovereignty that these forces hold within us. And then we're open to collective, ignorant, male-dominated, or it's not even male-dominated, it's just patriarchal-dominated, and the woman feels bad rather than feeling a sense of freedom of her own sovereignty over her own body. And the Hetaira sex is certainly part of the repertoire, but the very important thing is that she is the companion, the intellectual companion, the inspiration. Unfortunately, if she loses a sense of herself, she doesn't get any credit. So the whole point is become conscious of this type, but also making sure you get the credit too. Okay, because how often, people will take your loving creative energy and use all your inspiration and then say, oh, look what I did, and meanwhile, it was your force. But if you don't know your value, if you don't know your feminine wisdom, okay, and you're getting lost in the merge, you're going to come out feeling used, and you don't have to. You can inspire, but you don't have to give away the whole enchilada, okay? So that's part of what we want to start looking at about this, too, is this energy that's in us, okay, this force, and to bring it to consciousness. So Tony Wolfe, who was, as I said, the companion, and there's no record as to how long they were lovers. I mean, they were lovers, but she stayed on long after the love affair because she was such a tremendous contribution to the Jungian work, one of the unsung heroes. And he loved her very, very much, as he did his wife. I know, how could that be? But it is. It happens. And so Toni Wolfe, what she writes about, what she saw the role of the Hetaira in a different light, principally that of the companion, friend, and peer of the man in order to assist him to achieve his best development and accomplishments, as well as her own. In this sense, she felt her own life to be dedicated not only to a man, Jung, and their life and work together, but also to the study of the distinct ways in which women relate to themselves and the world through the archetypal roles. Her understanding of the places of the Hetaira rightfully among them, and the social structures concerning the Hetaira, and the societal sense. And in this work, Wolfe looks at the psychological, spiritual, and historical constructs of this type. So that's what these talks are being inspired by is Toni Wolfe, because she understood this. And contributed a great deal to the Jungian stuff. Okay, and I think there's only one published work. I think she only wrote one thing, and her notes. I don't think they were ever published, although I'm not really sure about that. Mm-hmm. So in this type, okay, so what would that look like in ancient times, of course, it was the courtesans, okay? They were trained. They were the only women who were allowed to be educated. And they were entertainment, and they were educated, and very often became richer than their clients because they were very smart. And courtesans began as mistresses to the papal court. You heard it, papal court, during a period when the papal, they were supposed to be celibates, but, you know, they had mistresses, and they were brought to the court. So these women were trained in wisdom and, you know, conversation. Because we need the mirroring of the opposite. Men need to hear or need to see in a woman's eyes what he's talking about. Because we don't realize it, but men really do care about what we think about them. They want to be loved and respected or seen as intelligent. And what will happen if a woman has a strong Hetaira, okay, suddenly the man feels smarter when he's around her because she's really interested. She's not pandering. She's interested in his ideas, no matter how half-baked they may be, okay? And he feels smarter and he feels better. And she also does this with her friends, okay? Or she can inspire the animus in another woman. Like, wow, that's really cool. Yeah, I get that. Okay, do it now. Yeah. And she's been underground for a long time, and certainly the feminists weren't thrilled about her. But I think there's starting to become an understanding, because part of the fullness of being feminine is all of these things. It's just not just one side or in opposition to the male. It's the fullness of who we are, okay? So for our purposes, we are trying to understand, so she can also be, I don't know if anybody read the story of a geisha or the diary of a geisha. Is very interesting about the geisha life. Some of it's very romanticized. It can be a very tough life, but I guess it works better for people who have more of a Hetaira. They do well with it. It's the life that they want. They feel the power of that, which usually when you're trained as a geisha, you're not supposed to have power. But, you know, hey, this is 21st century. We're taking our power back. Or we're remembering. We never lost it. We just let it rot. And by power, I mean authenticity. I mean the energy that we need to live our lives in the fullness and let others live. Because also when we understand these different types and we see them in other women, it's cool. It's like, oh, I get it. And then we know how they're going to operate. We know what they're going to be about. And we also know what their secret longings are, because in the shadow is the opposite. So the opposite of the mother is the Hetaira. The opposite of the Hetaira is the mother. All right? That doesn't mean that's the lives they want to live, but to feel more balanced, they need to have those opposites, you know, in our life. So what can happen with the Hetaira, with the shadow of it, she also carries the possibility of a dangerous and defeating unconscious shadow component. So if it's not main conscious, and a way to comprehend it and guard against the possibilities of despair and defeat, that's what we're going to try to do here. So I can't believe it, but the English lady just tell me I have to bounce. So Facebook, Venus Unplugged, download on iTunes or Blog Talk Radio. Call for a session, 212-757-8914, and we will continue with this very interesting archetype called the Hetaira. And find her. She's the one who wants to buy those red shoes. So go out and buy some red shoes. Bye.
They're gonna kill the love of my life.
Casey!
If I don't go back to what I was doing.
Our line of work is quite brutal and quite ruthless.
How far would you go for love?
You steal truck, bring it to me. Then you make your money.
Is it dangerous?
Of course it's dangerous.
Nicholas Hoult, Felicity Jones, with Ben Kingsley and Anthony Hopkins.
All this trouble, all this pain, for love.
Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. Collide. Now playing. Rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. Collide. Now playing.